Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Glenn from the On Education Podcast. And we're part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Coming up on episode 136 of the House of EdTech podcast, I'm going to share two conversations that I had at ISTE 2019, and I've got my EdTech thought, where I'm going to talk about bad advice, and the House of EdTech recommendation, which is a great new podcast that you need to check out. Strike up the band. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nessie. The House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn. Hey, howdy, hey. Welcome. It is hot. It is humid. It's the middle of summer 2019, and I'm recording a podcast episode just for you. I hope you enjoyed the re-release of episode 74, where I talked about how we get more women in STEM, where I had 3 fantastic guests, so I hope that you enjoyed it. If it was your first time listening to that episode, I hope you got value, and if you re-listened to it because it was a replay, I hope you enjoyed the conversation once again. That was one of my favorite episodes, and that's why I picked it to re-release into the podcast feed. But now let's turn our attentions to the here and now. ISTE 2019 happened in Philadelphia, and I had some great conversations. I got to meet a lot of people, and I'm going to talk about that in just a couple of minutes. But first, a previous episode, I did get some audio feedback from Linda Hummer, so let's get right to Linda's audio feedback via SpeakPipe on chrisnessie.com. Take it away, Linda.
Hi, Chris. My name's Linda Hummer, and I am the Technology Integration Specialist for Patrick Henry Schools in Hamler, Ohio. My question has to do with the Anchor app. I just listened to the interview you did with Casey Bell on Shake Up Learning, and I am also a longtime listener of your House of EdTech, so thank you for all that you do. My question has to do with being the one that is in control of the RSS feed. I will be doing a podcast using Anchor next year with my 4th grade students and created a demo one this spring, and I'm noticing that it's telling me that it is now available on several different places. As I go back into Anchor, I am not sure what I need to check or uncheck, or if I can even do that since I've already created the podcast. If you could give me some help, I would certainly appreciate it, and thank you so much for all that you do.
First, thank you so much for being a listener to the House of EdTech. It's always nice to connect with people who listen to what I'm doing here. Second, thank you for checking out the Shake Up Learning Show and enjoying the conversation that I had with Casey Bell on her podcast back in episode 14 of her show, where I did talk a lot about education podcasting, and one of the things that I talked about was Anchor.fm as a podcast media host. And in that conversation, as Linda alluded to, I did talk about it, and part of what I shared with Casey was a cautionary tale about using Anchor for podcasting, whether with students or even for yourself if you want to get into podcasting. Here's why I caution people about Anchor. You don't have the ability to control your RSS feed if you don't set your account up and launch your podcast in a way that lets you control your RSS feed. So, Linda, unfortunately, since you set up a podcast, you probably clicked all the very big buttons, and you probably had Anchor automatically distribute this podcast to every place that you can send to. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any of the other places that Anchor makes it really easy to distribute your podcast to. So once you've distributed, it becomes a little more challenging to remove your podcast from those places. My first piece of advice would be to reach out to Anchor support and see if they can unsubmit and pull the podcast from Apple Podcasts and anywhere else that it may automatically be going. Now, odds are they're either going to not respond to you, or they're going to respond and tell you that they can't help you out and unsubmit the stuff. In which case, I would recommend that you would create a new podcast within Anchor, and then very carefully reading the smaller print, so to speak, don't have Anchor automatically submit your podcast, and just keep telling Anchor, I'll do that myself. So the best example I have for that is where I'm doing the podcasting with my own students in New Brunswick High School. I created an Anchor account to archive the episodes and put the player on the school website and whatnot. But on the Anchor account, I haven't submitted the RSS feed anywhere. So it's just really a place to have the free storage and kind of put the episodes up when we run out of space on our Spreaker account, which you might want to also consider using for your student podcasts. Spreaker is a great way to get into podcasting for free. And if you grow and you find that you have resources to invest in a Spreaker account, or your students start podcasting and they want to kind of go off, they have the ability to have a Spreaker account grow with them. But my best advice for what you've done with Anchor so far is, again, reach out to them and see if they can help you kind of unsubmit and get the stuff pulled down from where you might not want it to be out there when you publish it. And then if they can't, then when all else fails, you can delete that or start another podcast, and then just make sure you don't submit stuff to be published automatically to all those places. And now if you need any help with that, please email me, feedback@chrisnessy.com, or reach out on Voxer, and I'd be happy to walk you through it. So thanks for sending in that little bit of feedback, Linda. I really appreciate it. And if who's listening, if you haven't checked out Casey Bell's Shake Up Learning, go check it out. And I'm a little partial to myself. Maybe you go start with episode 14, where I talk all about podcasting in education. And speaking of podcasting in education, let's talk about podcasting on education. I have a great new podcast that I'm welcoming to the Education Podcast Network family, and that is the On Education Podcast. So I want to give a big welcome to Mike Washburn and Glenn Irvin, the hosts of the On Education Podcast. And here's a description about the On Education Podcast. Quote, "There's a lot going on. Technology, grading, policy, planning, DeVos, grading, iPads, conferences, grading, Trump, classroom management, grading, curriculum, special needs. And did we say grading? We get it. On Education is here to help. We have honest conversations about teachers, teaching, and everything in between. It's time we talked, and we're hoping you will join the conversation. Meet Mike and Glenn. We're educators. We've been everywhere you've been. Mike is Canadian, Glenn is American. We cover all the bases. This isn't your normal teacher conversation. This is the staff room, the good ones. We are real, honest, sometimes brutally, and we are hoping informative. Join us as we talk to world-class educators, take questions, and tell you what's new." End quote. So that's the description for the On Education Podcast. Welcome aboard to the Education Podcast Network. You heard their bumper at the top of this episode of the House of Ed Tech. If you're not subscribed to On Education, search for it in your podcatcher of choice, and make sure you also go to their website, oneducationpodcast.com. Next up, I got postcards, everybody. Woot woot. It worked. I got postcards. I am holding in my hand here in the studio 5 postcards. So I got postcards. That's awesome. So as you know, when summer started, I put the call out that in your travels as a listener of the House of Ed Tech to send postcards from your travels. And I've got 5 in my hand. Thank you to Derek Larson. Derek Larson sent me 5 postcards from his recent family vacation. And I'm probably going to screw up the order here, but this was really cool because, one, I'm holding something that Derek held in his hand. And I mean, I've got to meet Derek, as you might be aware previously. So we've shaken hands, we've hugged it out. So Derek sent me a postcard from historic Nauvoo, which is in Illinois, which is very important to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So that's really cool. It's a great postcard. The first postcard he sent me was from Des Moines, Iowa, and it is a picture of the inside of the state capitol. And he also sent me one from Bryce Canyon National Park, where he spent the day hiking and enjoying the park with family, and it was awesome. And his advice is get outside and unplug, which is ironic because I'm sitting here podcasting. So thank you, Derek, for that. Where else did he send me one from? This is more because of his now career as a school librarian, and also my wife was excited. This is the Iowa State Capitol Law Library, located on the second floor of the Iowa State Capitol. That looks very cool, where he says it's such a great library, and he's so glad for all the books that are valued. Very cool. And then the last one I have here, this is from the Mark Twain Cave in Hannibal, Missouri, which was a fun 2 days for the family, where he visited Hannibal, Missouri, where Shoeless Joe is from. If you were in the play Damn Yankee, Shoeless Joe from Hannibal Mo. And this was the inspiration for Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer. I am going to hopefully be diligent, so future Chris will scan these postcards, and I will post them in the show notes for this episode of the podcast over at chrisnessy.com/136. And if you are still traveling this summer, send me a postcard. The address is 205 McDermott Road, Neptune, New Jersey, 07753. And I would love to know where you're traveling. And super huge thank you to Derek Larson for sending me all these postcards. It really makes me feel cool. And it was really neat to see the different photos. And again, I'll have those out on the website. Thank you, Derek. And I look forward to getting a postcard from you at some point this summer. All right, it's time for the EdTech Thought, and I have titled this Bad Advice. I have a question for you. How do we combat bad advice and misinformation we get online? Whether it's Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, doing a simple Google search, talking to people, how do we fight off bad advice and misinformation? Now, I asked this question because I was recently very aggravated and annoyed. As you might know, and I've hinted at, my current passion, and I really enjoy podcasting, talking about podcasting, bringing podcasting into schools, and I think everybody should try podcasting. Sure, writing a blog is easy. Starting a YouTube channel is hard, and if you're like me, you know, you've got a face for radio like I do, so podcasting is just audio. I think it's the way to go, and I think it's or has the ability to really make a really positive impact through this medium. And I'm in a Voxer group that's full of educational podcasters, and I got to tell you, one particular person just really has aggravated me over the last couple of years with the type of advice that they would give. And I'm not saying they gave bad advice, but the advice was to the tune of, it was just like talking and no real value. Like, you know, just you do you and just make decisions that you think are going to work for you. And I'm sorry, that's not advice and that's not helpful. And sometimes you see people outside of even this Voxer group where people just give out bad advice. And my approach is, whether it's on Twitter or on Voxer, I feel as an educator and somebody in the public eye that you really can't call people out for being wrong. But sometimes when we're sharing things that we believe in, maybe it comes across, hopefully, as being more valuable than when somebody speaks words, but their words really don't amount to anything. And I don't know how you feel, but it's just been really frustrating since I became active on Twitter, back in 2009. And, you see people putting out information about all kinds of things, whether you're an edupreneur or you're a guru or you're an expert, how do we ward off the bad information or the bad advice, or when people are just straight up wrong? I like to think that through this medium where, I'm not just talking, and a lot of the podcasts you listen to, people aren't just making stuff up. Okay. I'm not just sitting here, or when I talk about Libsyn or I talk about Spreaker, or if I talk about self-hosted WordPress, I'm not just pulling that stuff, out of, parts unknown and things like that. I'm speaking from experience. When it comes to podcasting, I started this show back in 2014, and I made a lot of mistakes. There are things in my back catalog that make me cringe. You know, if you haven't listened to episode 1 of this podcast, take a few minutes. The episode is less than 20 minutes. Go to chrisnessy.com/1 or go all the way back and listen to the first episode. It's horrendous. You know, I don't want to say it's embarrassing, but it shows growth. And, you know, I started hosting this podcast, the actual MP3 files, on Google Drive. You know, I wasn't prepared to invest money, but I knew I wanted to create the podcast. So, you know, I grew. I started off with a microphone that was not made for podcasting. And then I graduated to a microphone that people hardly ever recommend for podcasting because people don't use it correctly. And I stopped using the Blue Yeti because I didn't know how to use it. And even if I did learn how to use it, I don't have the space to use it properly here in the worldwide House of EdTech headquarters. So, you know, the recommendations I make when it comes to podcasting or even stuff in the classroom, it's based on experience. And I'm going to give you specific things. That's one of the things that I pride myself on here on this podcast, is giving you specific advice, specific recommendations, and bringing on people who aren't going to speak in general terms and will talk a lot, but don't say anything of value. You know, I give you the recommendations every episode. You know, I have guests come on here and talk about specific things. So those are some of the things I know you come to know and expect and appreciate here on this podcast. So what I ask you is, when you go out, give specific recommendations. We're all big boys and girls, you know, and if you can't take honesty and you can't take value, then get out of the conversation. Leave the Voxer group. Don't join the Twitter chat, whatever the case may be. But bring your best self to the conversations, bring your honesty, and bring your experiences, because those stories, those have value. That's why some of the biggest YouTube channels out there are big, because people are sharing their story. You know, I don't really come on here and tell you how to do anything. I share my story. I share my experience, and hopefully, you know, we all learn together, me by reflecting and you from listening and, you know, hearing what somebody else did and then doing something that is different. But maybe my experience helps you. That's why I ask for feedback, or we do the Just Give It a Try segment. That's another way for me and the audience of this podcast to learn together. So how do we combat bad advice and misinformation? I think it's a one-step thing. Don't give out bad advice and misinformation. Speak from your experience, and if you don't understand or you want to do something different, ask questions, be reflective, and grow. Because as Maya Angelou once said, when you know better, do better. Give out the good advice. Take the good advice. And if somebody's feeding you a bunch of garbage, don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. And maybe share what you know and share your experience and help them along. And that's my EdTech thought. Now it's time for this episode's House of EdTech recommendation. And for this recommendation, I'm going to play you a short conversation that I recently had with Nishi Langhorn. She is an educator and podcaster, and I am going to pass it right over to myself and Nishi from just a few nights ago. And as a special bonus for this, the 136th episode of the House of EdTech podcast, I am joined live here at the beginning of July with Nishi Langhorn. She is the host of the Invitations to Learn podcast, which, as she brought to my attention earlier this evening, I did talk about previously on this podcast, but I did not remember. But now Miss Langhorn joins us live. Good evening, Nishi. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. You are on the House of EdTech podcast.
Excellent. I'm so excited to be here. And I want to thank you again, Chris, for inspiring me to start my own podcast, Invitations to Learn, where I hold classroom conversations on making learning more rigorous, engaging, and blended. And I interview teachers, administrators, counselors, psychologists, really anybody in the education world about an area where they are an expert in. And we have a conversation.
I am going to be sharing this in the show notes for this episode, so people will be able to subscribe wherever they get podcasts. So there's going to be a link to that. As I look here, you have 20 or so episodes.
I do.
Which one of your 20 are you most proud of that somebody should definitely check out?
That's a really great question. I would say my favorite interview, they were all wonderful, but my favorite interview was using technology mindfully, because I learned a lot about how to use technology in a really healthy way. And I learned about some apps that students can use, that parents can use, that teachers can use to really balance technology, but also mindfulness. So that one was wonderful. Also, the Deeper Learning Conference podcast, where I reflected with my colleagues who went to the Deeper Learning Conference in San Diego with me in March. That was a wonderful podcast as well, because we reflected on an unbelievable, life-changing experience in attending that conference. So those are two that I would definitely feature.
All right, so I will link to the whole show. I will also put a link to those two specific episodes. Now, why did you start the podcast?
Well, I started the podcast because I used to be a teacher, and now I'm an instructional technology coach in Fairfax County, and I work with teachers one-on-one. And what I realized is that teachers are experts in so many different areas, and that teachers can learn from other teachers. So I started interviewing teachers on the areas where they're an expert in. For example, we had a teacher who was really skilled at flexible seating and how to transform her classroom into a coffee shop, really. And we did a podcast on that. I had a teacher who was really skilled with using HyperDocs to differentiate in her classroom. And so we did a podcast on that. And so that's kind of why I started the podcast, because I realized that there were so many teachers and people in my building who were experts in areas that other teachers could also learn from.
That is awesome. Before I let you go, let me just say while you're here that to you who's listening to this, normally at the end of the episode, I tell you to do all these things to support the House of EdTech podcast, and I tell you to tell other people. But I'm still going to say that at the end of the episode, but ignore what I say then and do what I say now. So here is one call to action for this episode, and that is go check out Nishi's podcast and then tell somebody else about it and share it on social media and tag her. Now, when they tag you on Twitter, what are they going to tag you as? How can people connect with you socially?
Yes, it's at Mrs. Langhorne.
That is,
E at the end.
It'll be linked in the show notes, and I will certainly tweet about your show when this episode comes out. So you're on summer hiatus. You'll be back in September.
I will. August. I'll be back in August. We start early in Fairfax County.
Well, it's those 12 snow days you build in. I guess you have to start school sometime.
That's right.
Nishi, it was great to connect with you. Thank you for listening to this show, and I'm glad that I could play a small piece of you getting into podcasting, and I wish you nothing but continued success. And everybody who listens to my show, you need to go and check out hers.
Thank you. You're the best.
Hey, thank you again, Nishi, for coming on to the House of EdTech podcast. It was so great to talk to you and give you a little bit of help, a little bit of on-air coaching, so to speak, as some other podcasters do. So that was a lot of fun. Best of luck with your podcast. And you who is listening, head over to chrisnessy.com/136, and you'll be able to get the links to Nishi's podcast and connect with Nishi online as well. So as I alluded to at the top of the episode, I'm going to be sharing some recordings from ISTE 2019, and I had a blast on Sunday, June 23rd, 2019, in the city of brotherly love, because I was busy. I got to the Pennsylvania Convention Center at 7:30 a.m., and I did not leave Philly until almost 9 o'clock at night. So it was a great time where I spent a bulk of my day in what was the Bloggers Cafe the last time I was in Philly for ISTE. I went to the same area, set my stuff up. Thank you for those of you who came out. You saw the new House of EdTech banner, and I had, the 4 microphones set up and recorded some great conversations, some of which I'm going to feature here in the next couple of minutes. But first, I got to give some shout outs to some people who I was fortunate to meet face-to-face finally. First and foremost, shout out to Mike Messner, an awesome supporter of the podcast who I got to have a conversation with that I recorded, and I will be playing for you in just a few minutes. I got to meet, shake hands, hug, and chat with JP Prezavento, also an awesome supporter and host of the Bits and Bytes of Education podcast, and we talked about JP's new role in education, so it was really great to meet JP face-to-face. And if you haven't heard or you're not subscribed to Podcast PD, head over to podcastpd.com, because Stacy, Linda's, AJ Bianco, and I recently had a conversation just before the end of the school year with JP about shifting his role in education, which might be beneficial to you if you happen to be shifting your role in education as well at any point in time. I also got to meet Stella Pollard, who is a great supporter here of the House of Ed Tech. She's always talking about the show on Twitter, and it was great to shake her hand, give her a hug, and just talk face-to-face with Stella Pollard. I also got to meet recent guest, and she's going to appear a little bit later in this episode, Stephanie Howell, who, congratulations, she's going to be having a baby, which is fantastic. Chip Cash from New Jersey, got to meet face-to-face and hang out with a little bit. Erin Krieger, who I know from the Education Podcasters Voxer group, who is also a podcaster, and you will hear from Erin coming up in just a few minutes. Also got to meet, and you'll hear from Scott Nunes, awesome, the host of the TNT podcast. Got to meet face-to-face finally, and you would have thought that this would have happened sooner, but it finally happened back in ISTE. Got to meet face-to-face with Casey Bell, who, if you don't know Casey Bell, you live under a rock. And I got to hang out with Matt Miller again, the two co-hosts of the Google Teacher Tribe podcast, which I am proud to produce. And I had not seen Matt Miller in person since the last time we were in Philly for ISTE in Philly a few years ago, when I got word from a mutual contact that Matt Miller wanted to meet me because I was the host of our house. Easy for me, because I was the host of the House of Ed Tech. And I was like, what? The Ditch That Textbook guy wants to meet me? I want to meet him. So that was really cool. I got to meet and chat with face-to-face for a few minutes Wanda Terrell, previous guest of the Google Teacher Tribe podcast. And I know she listens to this podcast, and it was just great to have a nice conversation with Wanda, who, thank you for letting me know and watching the podcast stuff, because I was able to run to the big lobby and get some free Italian ice from Rita's that they were just giving away. It was awesome. Also got to reconnect with face-to-face, and we had only met one other time. Got to hang out with Jesse Lubinsky, co-host of the Partial Credit podcast. He was at the Education Podcast Network House of Ed Tech cheesesteak meetup at Pat's and Gino's, which was awesome. Got to hang out with Dr. Sam Fessich, co-host of the EduMagic podcast and former guest of this very show, as well as Dan Krynas, and also Rena Hawkins, who is also a podcaster. And I'm going to have links to all of these people's contact information and their podcast information, if they've got one, out in the show notes for this episode at chrisnessy.com/136. I alluded to it just a few minutes ago that the Education Podcast Network meetup was awesome. People showed up in Education Podcast Network t-shirts. There were some Podcast PD shirts, and I didn't have to buy that many cheesesteaks, but it was awesome to shake hands and have podcasters connecting with podcasters. We took a big group shot of all the hosts that were there, and that'll be in the show notes as well. I've also tweeted it on social media, which you might have seen in the last few weeks. It's awesome. Something I will put out to you, if you find yourself in Philadelphia at Pat's King of Steaks, one of the light poles now has a bunch of education podcast stickers on it, one of which is the House of Ed Tech podcast. It's a 3x3 sticker, 3 inches by 3 inches. And if in the future you get a selfie with that sticker and you send it to me, I will send you a House of Ed Tech t-shirt. So if you find yourself in Philly, go have a cheesesteak, take a picture, get a free t-shirt. Next, we got some audio, and I put out the call on Twitter. So I got some feedback from Stephanie Howell that she sent in, and also Debbie Tannenbaum. So why don't we take care of that? And let's hear what Stephanie Howell's favorite session was.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Howell, and I'm from Pickerington, Ohio. You can connect with me on Twitter at Mrs. Howell24. My favorite session at ISTE was the Schools Anywhere. Tom Mulaney invited me to this session. He was leading it, and you traveled a lesson as a student, and you went to 4 different stations. So the first station was like a mini lesson where you were kind of taught like how to use Google Sheets and the Explore tool with a Google Doc and transforming that information to the Google Doc, copying and pasting. The next station we did VR, and we actually did VR on the Chromebooks. So I'm told my administrator we need to push out that app on that Chromebook so students can see different places and kind of help close that experience gap that we're experiencing in school. The next station was a mystery Skype, kind of. We talked with an expert in the field, and we got to feel how that felt as a student. And then the final station was a creation station, and we were able to create different things with creating like the Jamboard and using coding and WeVideo to create. One of the people that I met at ISTE was Chris Nessie, and he was amazing. I'm so glad that I met him. And then I did not win really any giveaways, but we did a scavenger hunt, and we won a prize because we got third place, so that was fun. And I think attending the conference really impacted my teaching because I was able to connect with so many educators.
Thank you, Stephanie, for sending that in, and we're going to hear from Stephanie in just a few seconds when I share a much longer conversation that she was a part of. But first, take it away, Debbie Tannenbaum, with her takeaways from ISTE 2019.
Hey, Chris, you asked about our top takeaways, so here goes. Here are my top takeaways. My first takeaway is connections. Meeting people in person from my Twitter PLN was amazing, and I learned so much. My second one was the importance of choice and voice in PD. Experiencing that made me want to bring that home even more to my teachers. My next one was everyone has something to share. You never know who's sitting or standing next to you. Let's face it, if you're at ISTE, you are an ed tech enthusiast. Getting to meet people and learn their perspectives was so amazing. My next one was try something new and challenge yourself. I got to try lots of new things while at ISTE, and it really contributed to the experience. My next one is you don't have to be at a session to learn something. I learned so much through playgrounds and conversations with others. My next one is we're much more alike than we could possibly imagine. We all have the same struggles, and yet we can work together to find solutions. My next one was don't forget to use old tech tools new ways. We can use slides for stop motion. We can use forms and sites to make digital breakouts. There's no stopping the innovative ideas. My next one was words matter. Think about how we talk and use words. Is it professional development or professional learning? And how can we best coach our teachers? In all, no one throws a conference like ISTE. I had such a great time and learned so much. It was a totally transformative experience.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks for listening to the show, and thank you for sending in your thoughts on ISTE 2019. Now, here is a short conversation that I had with awesome supporter of the podcast all the way from California, and we got to meet and shake hands in Philadelphia in the what I called the Bloggers Cafe. And this is my conversation that I had with awesome supporter Mike Messner. It's me. This is on video, but this is also some audio that's going to appear in a summer episode of the podcast. And I am joined by awesome supporter, the man, the myth, the California legend, Mike Messner. Good morning, Mike.
Hello, Chris. It's good to be here with you.
I am so excited. One, we got to shake hands. Mm-hmm. I can look you in the eye. And what brings you to Philadelphia this weekend?
Well, probably the same reason you're here, Chris, is to attend ISTE 19. This is my first conference, and I'll be presenting on Monday for ListenWise. With my friend Monica Brady-Meyerov, and then 4 o'clock faculty, which is my PLN, will be presenting on Tuesday morning. So I'm really excited to be here, and it is a great city, and it's good to be sitting down with the man behind the mic.
Now, you mentioned Monica and ListenWise, who I've had some conversations with. Mm-hmm. Obviously, she does podcasting. ListenWise is all about bringing audio into the classroom. Yeah. Talk about what you're going to be presenting.
Well, we're going to be talking about active listening and civic participation. The active listening being that it's, in some ways, it's more impactful than reading because listening allows you to create the pictures in your head. I mean, that goes all the way back to old-time radio. You being a history teacher, can appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
So there's that aspect of it. And then civic engagement, we're going to be playing some podcasts that I've used and that some other educators in the network have used. I'm going to be doing one on the separation of powers for my civics class, and then another one on anti-Semitism, which I use for my U.S. history class. And I'm going to be talking about how I leveraged those using both the materials that ListenWise provided, and then also how I sort of took it one step further to get the kids to think about, okay, how are you going to deal with this issue or act on this issue once you leave this classroom? So that's what it's going to be, and Monica and I are going to split it. I'm going to be meeting with her tonight to go over things, and we're both really excited about it.
That does sound super cool. As one who creates podcasts, and I've used some podcasts this year in the classroom. Do you listen to the podcast Throughline from NPR?
I don't know that one. I do listen to Planet Money and The Indicator and other NPR podcasts, and of course the House of Ed Tech and many others. But I'm going to have to put that one on my list.
It's really good. I actually used an episode just a couple of weeks ago. The premise of the podcast is it looks at issues of today, but goes to find an origin point in history and connects the dots, the through line from the past to the present. And the one that I found most recently that was applicable in my class was about white nationalism. So it traces it all the way back to, and I forget the guy's name, this guy who was born in Brooklyn in the late 1800s, and he wrote all this stuff that was all BS, garbage, not real science.
Okay.
But it was material and literature that found its way to the Nazi Party. And the question I asked my students was, in advance, did the United States influence the Nazis? And they were like, no way. And I'm like, well, let's listen to this. And they were like, what? So anyway, that podcast looks at an historical topic and brings it through to the present. So definitely
that
check
sounds
that out.
like something I need to do. There was an article in American History Magazine about the eugenics movement and how that influenced everything that happened in Nuremberg. So yeah, good stuff.
And what are you going to be doing in the other presentation?
Well, I'm actually going to be cheering on the other members of 4 O'Clock faculty. They got together and put this on, but their presentation really, Chris, is going to be about the power of a PLN and how ours happened more or less spontaneously. Studying Rich Chiz's book, The 4 O'Clock Faculty, on Voxer, which was this new app that everybody was really crazy about back in late 2017, early 2018. And we really all bonded over that book and the messages and the things that we'd done in the classroom and the mistakes that we'd made. And at the end of that, the guy who had sort of kicked it off, Matt Larson, said, hey guys, do you want to keep this going? And everybody said, yes, this is what I've been looking for. These are like-minded individuals. These are passionate educators. These are people who really, really care about teaching and about helping kids. And so that relationship has continued. As a matter of fact, 14 or 15 of us rented 3 apartments just around the corner from here. And so we're all sharing space for the next few days. And so it's really cool to meet people in 3D now rather than just over Voxer.
In real life, F to F, face to face is certainly fantastic. And as somebody who, I'm spoiled, New Jersey is the greatest state for education. So I've been fortunate to hang out with Rich and also Matt
Larson, yes.
Matt Larson. So they're good dudes.
Yeah, and actually I heard about Rich's book for the first time on an episode of the House of Ed Tech. So it was kind of cool, or Podcast PD, rather. So it was actually kind of, there's kind of a convergence there between your efforts and the book and 4 O'Clock faculty. So you had a seed in that, too.
Well, for that, I say you're welcome. So we're recording this on Sunday the 23rd. So what is on tap for you here before the conference really gets going?
Well, I'm going to go downstairs and do a history goose chase, which, you know, being in Philadelphia and being a history teacher, you know, this is just, I'm a kid in a candy store.
This is the mecca of U.S. history right here.
Exactly. And then we're going to get some cheesesteaks later on. I'm going to go to a Taste of Philly tonight, which is going to be down at the Reading
the Terminal Market?
Depot. Yeah, the market.
Yep.
Thank you. And I'm going to try to get as many people in, try to see as many things and see as many people as I can. I'm going to go to some coffee EDUs and hoping to get on the plane on Wednesday night well used up.
There you go, where you'll be ready to sleep on the flight home.
That's exactly right.
Nice. Before I let you go, how can people best connect with you? I mean, everybody who's listening to the show knows that I say your name and your Twitter at the end of the episode, but I want to hear from you.
Well, I'm at TeacherMike72 on Twitter. You can reach me at teachermike72@gmail.com. And look up anything having to do with the 4 o'clock faculty. There's a good chance that you'll see me or hear from me. 4 o'clock faculty is also on Voxer. And if you're wondering, okay, how do you tell which one Mike is? Okay, I'm going to be the one that you think is, you don't expect me to be as tall as I am. People have been saying that all week. I didn't expect that you would be, and I'm 6'2", and apparently everybody in the faculty that I've met is shorter than that. So what are you going to do? But anyway, so that's me, and I'd love to make connections with anybody who's a friend of the show or listens to either one of the shows, because I'm always looking to grow and to expand my network, and we can help each other.
Mike, thank you for being on the House of EdTech.
Thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again, Mike. It was great to shake your hand and chat a little bit and get to know you. As you know, and I'm pretty sure you would agree, face-to-face is so important. So when you have the opportunity to meet somebody face-to-face and say hello and just, shake hands and just engage in conversation, it is super awesome and super valuable. So thanks for a few minutes again, Mike. It was really great to talk to you. Now let's turn our attention to a longer conversation. This is about 25, 26 minutes. And it's a conversation that started out with me and Scott Nunes from the TNT Education Podcast. And over the course of this conversation, we're going to add Erin Kiger, Stephanie Howell, and Gina Cooper from the TNT Education Podcast, the Undercaffeinated Podcast, the Tech Connect EDU Podcast, and Stephanie Howell's Get Inspired and Innovate Podcast. Let's go back in time to ISTE for this really fun conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we are back here at ISTE 2019. Chris Nessie, House of EdTech Podcast, and I am joined now by Scott Nunes of the TNT EdTech Podcast. What's up, Scott?
Hey, Chris. Good to meet you in the flesh.
I know.
Super excited to be here.
Scott, what do you do in education?
So I'm an ELA teacher. I teach high school English, 9th and 10th grade in Modesto, California, primarily.
So sorry.
They keep me busy. That is for sure. I have to be on my A game every single day, and I really do mean that, my A game. And then I do podcasting on the side, and I like joining Twitter chats. That's kind of what I do.
So as a podcaster, a fellow podcaster, what sucked you into the world of podcasting?
At Fall Q this last year, 2018, I went to a session by Tom Covington and his buddy Mike, and they do the TOSA's Talking Tech podcast, and they introduced us to Anchor, and I just fell in love. And my buddy Matthew Ketchum and I both attended the session. We're like, we could totally do this.
We could do this.
Yeah, why don't we do it? Why don't we give it a go?
You came together. Get over there.
Yeah, come on in.
Go ahead, come on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Is that better?
Nice.
Yes, it is. So, Erin.
Yes.
Welcome to the House of EdTech.
Hello. It's nice to be here.
For those that don't know you, what do you do in education?
I am currently an instructional coach at an elementary school in Las Vegas. And in about 2 weeks, I will be an instructional coach at an elementary school in Orlando, Florida.
Wait, say that again?
Yeah. In 2 weeks.
That involves moving, or that's one hell of a commute.
You're right. It would be a very long commute, and I'm not going to make that. No, I am moving across the country in about 2 weeks. So ISTE, go home, pack, move, start the school year.
Wow.
That's insane.
It's a little overwhelming, but I'm really excited. I'm really excited for the change. Like, there's just no...
Well, I would say from the conversations we've had on Voxer and an education podcast group that you could totally do this.
I'm no stranger to moving. So, I'm a military brat. Kind of grew up with it. And then I did the whole, I'm going to move to Ohio. And then, I'm going to move back to Las Vegas. And now I'm like, all right, where else are we going to go, honey? Like a 1-year-old now.
Congratulations on that. I hear the baby is a fan of podcasts.
He is a particular fan of Casey Bell's Shake Up Learning. and yes, he and I go on long walks in the sun listening to educational podcasts. I'm starting him young.
Nice. Now, you are also a podcaster.
I am. Relatively
Talk a little bit about
new.
your show.
Okay. So I am a podcaster, one of 3. So Joelle Masseri, Ashley Pierce, and I, the 3 of us used to work together. And one of the things that we're just super passionate about is presenting and sharing all of the fun and exciting things that keep us engaged in education. And so Joelle came to us one day and was like, "Do you guys want to do a podcast?" And we were like, "Yes, we do." So we've had 25 episodes, I think. Our last one ended with Matt Miller. It was so awesome. We were
Now,
fangirling.
how did you come up with the name? You're going to get the same question, Scott, so be ready.
Okay, I'm thinking.
Think about it, mister. So, to be honest, I think a friend of mine from, like, way back in the day is the undercaffeinated writer, and I'd forgotten about that. But I think somewhere in the back of my brain, I knew that. And so when we were talking about, we were thinking, like, mom, teacher kind of thing. And it just, nothing was going, but we were always talking about how tired we were because Ashley and I both have babies, and Joelle has teenagers. So we're just always
It's like 2 ends of the spectrum. 2
very busy ends of the spectrum. Yes. And so it just kind of came out like, hey, we're undercaffeinated. We need coffee, we need caffeine. And so that's just kind of how it rolled out.
We're doing all sorts of easy for me to say. I've been here since 8 o'clock this morning. So, also joining us, as I make sure I hit all the right buttons.
Hello, it's Stephanie Howe.
What's up?
Hey,
Hi.
I heard you on your podcast.
I know. When was that episode? Like 2 weeks ago?
I released it 2 weeks ago,
Yeah,
and we talked
2
3
weeks
weeks
ago.
ago.
Yeah.
Nice
And
to
I'm
meet
at
you.
ISTE.
Welcome back. and who did you
everybody
bring?
is here.
Come on over.
Yeah, get over here.
Pull up a chair. I had the option to bring a 5th mic, and I just said, nah, I'm not going to need it. And here we are. So, welcome aboard. My name's Chris Nessie.
Hi, Chris. Nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you.
You saw the banner. That's me. Who are you?
I'm Gina Cooper. I'm an instructional technology coordinator at Pickerington with Stephanie. So I have the honor of working with her on a daily basis.
I thought you said she worked for you.
Depends on the day.
She acts like she's my boss. But
So, now you also have a podcast.
We do.
we do.
And Gina's on it.
Talk about it.
So we started a podcast right before
week.
ISTE. It was our last day of work. And it's called Tech Connect EDU. And that is with our school. Oh, there it is. Yep.
She even
She's
has a
got
card.
a business card.
I met the big boss earlier.
Yeah, and the big boss came by. It's with our school district. And we're going to be talking with teachers, students in our school district to promote kind of PD with podcasting. And then I also started another podcast with one of the Google innovators that I met in Sydney, Australia. And it is launched. We hit record. That was Chris's advice.
That's all it takes.
And it is called Get Inspired and Innovate. And
Did you
it's
subscribe?
It's been good.
Subscribe now.
Yeah, right now.
I'm on it.
And we are about to post our 3rd episode.
Okay, what am I searching?
Yay.
Get inspired and innovate.
And people can find that in Apple Podcasts.
Yep, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere you can listen. That's
Yeah, the
awesome.
Tech Connect EDU is on 7 platforms.
Yeah.
So I can't name them all, but it's there.
We're
So-
approved.
That's all it takes. So I know that Stephanie was getting into the podcasting. How'd she rope you in? How'd you get caught in all this?
I work at the high school level, and so we had talked a ton about podcasting, and I knew she was doing it at the middle schools. It was something that I didn't have a ton of experience with. And so actually this year we're working on some kind of collaboration. We want to get the kids doing a collaborative podcast between the high schools and the middle schools and the junior high kids. So we're going to try and create some kind of, we don't have it all ironed out yet, but that's our next goal, is to incorporate all of those things together.
Since I got you here, I'll put you on the spot.
That's okay.
Talk about some of the wrinkles. What are some of the... We can workshop it right now. What are you thinking? How would the high school collaborate with the middle school?
Well, we want to talk about topics, maybe even advice, high school kids giving advice to students that are coming up through junior high and high school and, working with them. Some of it is distance because we have 14 buildings. So how do we get them together to be able to do this? Some of it is time. The high schools are a different time span than the middle schools. So where can we find time in our day to get them together? So those are a couple of the wrinkles. And I don't know, can you think of any of the others that we've talked about?
But we're hoping that the high schoolers can also edit the podcast.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm doing it, where students can definitely...
And you have way more important things to do.
We're in providing the feedback, which is huge, which Gina mentioned.
Yeah.
Any other advice you'd have for us?
Yeah.
Getting somebody else to edit your show is certainly...
That's huge, right?
That's a huge step. Knowing that I do that for me and I do it for others. So that's nice.
We have tech gurus at the high school level that are kids that are in our media center that help with tech solutions and things like that. And so we're hoping that a lot of them get into some of this too. I want them doing more of the creation of content. They've been doing tutorial videos for some of our software that we use. And so they create the tutorial videos. And
so they're like a little in-house geek squad.
Yeah, totally in-house geek squad.
That's awesome.
They're awesome. They even have little badges, and they walk around like they own the school because
they
have their badges that say they're a tech guru. So I'm hoping to get them into more of the creation side of things, because a lot of them want to go into technology in some way, and a lot of them have really important things to say. So I want to give them that platform.
That's why everybody should podcast, because we've all got perspective. Kids certainly have interesting things to say. I think little kids should have their own podcasts, because kids say the darndest things.
They do.
I have a 4 and a 5-year-old. I can definitely agree with that.
We're speaking the same language. You'll get there.
I have a 9-year-old, 5-year-old, 2-year-old. So, yeah.
God bless you.
The struggle is real.
And I'm due in November, so we're going to find out.
Yeah. You're going to find out really soon.
You're going to be surprised, or what it's going to be like?
It's a boy.
It's a boy.
Yep.
We've got
Any
a boy
names?
coming. It's going to be AJ.
AJ.
Anthony, Jonathan, Hal. Like the
I like
full name.
it.
Yeah.
Well, let me give my first shout out to Anthony, Jonathan Howell.
We're
heard it
super
here first.
excited. Our first tech team baby.
A tech team baby.
He went to Google Innovator with me. He's at ISTE right now.
Wow.
He's going to be
doing
an
it
ed
up.
tech superstar.
You've got hashtag ISTE baby going on.
Yes.
Does that
we
make-
need to start this.
Does that make AJ a Google Innovator legacy?
I think so, because he was about 10 weeks then, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, he was about 10 weeks old then.
That's awesome.
I think so. We'll just
go
decide
with
it.
Yep. ISTE baby.
I'm sure he's got badges. You got email set up for him already?
Maybe not an email, but he does already have his Google Calendar and exactly when he is allowed to arrive planned out for him. So
He has to come a week late because of Christmas break. I need to get that aligned.
Well,
Good luck planning that.
I was going to say, we got 4 parents here who will tell you, okay.
I have a 4th of July
is this
baby
your
because he
podcast?
came 2 weeks
I just
early.
subscribed.
My wife
And I listened
is a
to it on
4th
the
of
plane
July
right here.
baby.
the selfie's complete.
Yes.
Wow, you're good.
I'm pretty good at it.
That was like pro level.
They do call me the selfie.
Got like a mini workout there.
You're doing a TED Talk?
I'm doing TED
Talk
Talk
about your
tomorrow.
TED. Don't give the TED Talk.
So ISTE did a TED Talk masterclass. And so Stephanie and I went through that together, and we were partners, and they had like think tank partners and
Okay.
things like that. And so when they said, if you want to present at ISTE, she was like, peace, I'm out. And I was like, that's my jam. So I have a saltwater tank. I love fish, and I have a 180-gallon saltwater tank at my house.
Wow.
It's a pretty big deal. And so I saw lots of parallels between trying to make and put together a saltwater tank and education and customizing learning for our students. So it's actually called How Fish Taught Me the Importance of Customizing Learning for Our Students. Not exactly a catchy title, but hopefully interesting enough that people will find it.
It lets you know what it's about.
Yeah. So
That's the point.
So hopefully it'll be good. We'll see. It's my first one.
Nice.
So I'm
Will this
really
be
excited.
available after the fact? Will
Yeah,
people
so
be
they're
able
going to
see
record it, and then they're going to post it on the ISTE website, so ISTE members can get a hold of
Wow.
it. We're still waiting on permission to, social media, throw it out to everybody. So
Re-release the audio as an episode of the show.
that would be amazing. We can do that.
Talk to the editor.
Editor-in-chief.
Where'd you get that from? What is that?
That should be
over there?
fun.
From where?
I know, and you didn't bring me mine?
You wanted to be on camera eating it, right? This is a pro level setup.
Yeah, it's not a Philly cheesesteak. It's just a cheesesteak.
Cheese.
That's like you don't go to Manhattan and order a New York slice of pizza.
Right. Yeah, she was pretty snotty. Stephanie did all the grunt work, so I knew how to order my
brotherly
cheesesteak.
love from a local.
And did you know about this Wit and Whiz thing?
No, what's that?
Yeah, I've been
Okay.
coming here for years. No, just let him figure it out.
Uh-oh.
There's a
I
big
thought
sign.
my friend asked me, and I thought he had a stroke. So I just really was not. I was like, "What are you saying?" Yeah, there's a Wit Whiz thing that you need to figure out if you're gonna order it.
I already know how to do it. Just
I had no idea.
Scott, you like onions?
I do.
You like Cheese Whiz?
No.
Then you want.
Then you are.
Then you want. Then you want Wit. Then you want Wit, no Whiz. Did I get it?
Okay.
Yeah, Wit no whiz.
Hey, I've
Wit,
got
no
this down.
whiz.
Wit
no
onions, no
Wit.
whiz.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you want both, you want the Wit Whiz.
Wit whiz. That,
Wit whiz.
that's what it's
Wit
all
Whiz,
about.
but Wit is onions.
Wit is onions.
Okay.
Is wit onions or is wit with? And just
It's both.
not pronounced
but the
with.
Wit means onions.
Yes.
Okay.
It was very confusing, and I don't like onions. So
I look
needed
forward to
make sure.
laughing at you at the cheesesteak meetup.
So you say
Well, you
no wit, no whiz?
Because if you screw it up, they
Yeah.
send you to the back of the line.
So mine was.
Do they really?
Oh,
I
yeah.
just told her I want meat and cheese. That's like really all I want. I'm like, can I just have meat and cheese?
Cheese whiz, apparently.
No, I wanted provolone, so I specifically said
Then you say with provolone.
wit provolone.
Wit provolone. You like onions?
No,
Oh, then say
yeah, the wit means onions. I don't know what that means.
with. There you go. At Gino's,
so
you can
glad you
get
brought me here with you, Stephanie.
broccoli Rob.
Ooh, what's that?
Broccoli Rob?
Isn't that
It's
from
like
the
broccoli, only not good by itself.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bitter. You can get it like on a chicken cheesesteak, a little provolone.
Okay.
It's almost 6 o'clock, right? Okay, good.
It's almost 4 o'clock.
Almost 4. That's almost 6. Somewhere. All right.
Not in Vegas.
Not in Vegas. No. What time is it back home? In Florida, where you're going to be.
In Florida, where I'm going to
It's
be,
the
it's the
same.
same time.
That's all I care about.
Are you from Vegas?
I'm from Vegas.
Okay, I get to go there next month for the first time ever.
Okay, I won't be there.
Okay.
But I can still tell you where to go, and I can tell you who to connect to.
Okay.
What are you going for?
I call it the John Hattie Conference, but it's not. It's called
Visible Learning?
The Visible Learning Conference,
awesome.
aka the John Hattie Conference.
Oh,
That's what I keep
want to
calling
go to
it.
that.
I hope it's good.
Yeah. They put
never
out
been
if
to
it's a
Vegas.
conference that
We're staying at the Bellagio.
Whoa.
Can't be all bad.
Hey, yeah.
Fancy.
Yeah.
Those of us in Vegas have to stay in our houses.
But they still gave us like the. You have houses in Vegas? I thought they only had like apartments there. I'm sheltered.
that's like saying that we.
I thought everybody lived on that ranch.
Oh, that's not in Vegas.
I know. I listened to a podcast all about it 2 weeks ago. I did.
You can't see it, but I'm blushing right now.
I have no idea what you just said, so I'm going to have to go look this up.
Well, Jenna, we're going to talk to you about prostitutes. Edit point 1.
Hashtag ISTE lesson number 1.
So outside of Las Vegas is the Bunny Ranch. It is the one place in this entire country that prostitution is legal in.
Oh,
Yeah.
fun.
You can make appointments, make reservations.
Wow.
How do you know this?
I listened to a podcast about it.
He listened to a podcast.
I really did. And it's really embarrassing that I can't think of the podcast I listened to that was talking about it.
Can't think of the title of the
It was
podcast.
This American Life.
Oh.
I've learned a lot of things today. I don't think any of it had to do with technology and education, but my life
But you're
is
learning.
more well-rounded.
There's
now.
a lot of technology
And at
and
some
education
point-
in Las Vegas.
You're going to
Oh,
be
yes.
talking to a little kid about technology, and they're going to want to do something with bunnies, and you're going to snicker.
Oh my goodness.
Just saying. So before I let everybody go, one, please promote your podcast and where people can continue to learn with you, and make sure you wave goodbye.
Okay. Goodbye. Although before I wave goodbye, which I already did. Can edit 2, point 2.
Snap, it's all going on YouTube.
So we are undercaffeinated, and it's spelled very uniquely. So it's UNDRCAFF 3, and I forget the rest.
INATED.
ATED. Thank you.
I was reading it.
Thank you. So we're the Undercaffeinated podcast, and we're just 3 very tired, very passionate educators who are also moms. So, right up your alley. Probably yours too.
This is happening.
And
you should say,
thank you.
I'm just going to jump in, undercaffeinated, where the first E is a 3.
Ooh, but okay.
There's no E in the under, though. You got to say that part, too. It's just UNDR.
Oh, so this is like Web 2.0 and...
and fun spelling.
Wow. I take it back.
Well, I think undercaffeinated, where the first E is gone and the second E is 3.
That works.
That would work on the back of a T-shirt if I ever heard.
Yes. Sounds like a nice little slogan.
Don't wear it to the punny range.
Sounds like you were undercaffeinated when you came up with that.
We're always undercaffeinated.
Well, now it's time to blow the whole thing up. Scott, please talk about the podcast.
So you can find me personally, Scott Noons, on Twitter at Mr. Noons Teach. So rhymes with tunes, Nunes. And then my podcast is the TNT EdTech Podcast with Matthew Ketchum. You can
Wait,
find
real quick
us.
before you finish.
Oh, yeah.
Just turn your head a little bit more to the right so it matches up with the sticker.
To the right. Does it look like me?
There you go.
I got the part. Yeah.
Amazing.
And then you can find the TNT EdTech podcast at on Twitter at TNT EdTech and online at www.tntedtech.com.
Nice.
That was a nice radio voice for that.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I gotta switch it up.
I used to be a radio DJ, but I was never that good.
Real?
I was.
Why am I finding out about this at the end?
It was fun.
So
ahead,
how
Jenna.
long did you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. We gotta know this.
I didn't mean to start a whole nother story.
But you did.
So I had 2 shows. One was in college, and we had the Thursday night, like 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. show. So
I'm
it was
sure
like
that show
the
was
party night show.
fantastic.
It was called the Foxy and Angel Show. I'll let you decide which one I was.
No, I want to know.
I was definitely Angel. My partner's name was Carolyn Fox. You've heard how sheltered I am.
No bunnies on that radio show.
There were no bunny ranches. So that was a fun show. And then I was a radio DJ at my home radio station in Millersburg, Ohio. And
What were the call letters? Give a shout out. The big...
WKLM 95.3. And so I did the sports and the weather and, introed songs, but we pre-recorded everything. So I would be in the grocery store, like grabbing stuff and hear my own voice come over the radio. So that was kind of fun. So Anyway. But our podcast, so our podcast from Pickerington is Tech Connect EDU, and our whole team will just be interviewing people and talking about what we're doing in our classrooms to innovate, and we're super excited about it. So that one's Tech Connect EDU.
Awesome. Thank you guys for taking a couple of minutes here, and enjoy the rest of ISTE. And
Thank you. You too.
there you go. That's all I
Thanks for
got.
inviting me in.
Aren't you glad you sat down?
I am. I'm so glad Stephanie drugged me along.
Some people know what that means.
Now I know why
Now you
I'm so amazing.
Well, that was a very fun conversation. Thank you so much to Scott, Aaron, Stephanie, and Gina. You're going to find links to their podcast and their Twitter and their contact information and their websites. Everything is out at chrisnessy.com/136. And if you didn't know, if you go to chrisnessy.com, that's where all the show notes for all the episodes are. And if you're not one who frequents the website, you can also sign up for my, I guess I'll call it an email newsletter, where only when episodes are released do you automatically get the show notes delivered to your inbox. So if you find yourself, wanting to visit chrisnessy.com, but you forget, here's a way you can go. Just go to chrisnessy.com one time, put in your email. I don't spam you. I only send out the email when I release episodes, so you're only getting the show notes from the episodes that I release, and occasionally, maybe like twice a year, will I send out another email to your inbox. So if you've never done that, check out chrisnessy.com. And now let's go over to the Just Give It a Try segment. So the Just Give It a Try segment was the brainchild of Dan Gallagher, awesome supporter of the House of EdTech podcast. And in this segment, I rely on you submitting to me something that you tried in your classroom or your school or your district, and it could have been super successful or it could have been a super failure, but I'm looking for you to share your stories here on the podcast. And today's installment comes from Ron Nober, who I've talked about on the podcast before, and he has his own podcast. It's the Teacher Nerds, Nerds is with a Z podcast, and this came in via the Just Give It a Try Flipgrid, which anybody can access at chrisnessy.com/justgiveitaTry. So let's hear what Ron tried.
Here I am, just recently finished listening to episode 133 of House of EdTech about starting a podcast, and have listened to past episodes with you, Chris, about podcasting. And this past year, tried it in my classroom. Did it with a 5th grade class, where they did some interviewing some sports figures in our classroom or in our school, and getting some stories from teachers in our school, and then doing just some of their own interests. Also did it with our media club, and had a really pretty good Philadelphia sports podcast going on, which hope to continue this coming year. But with that being said, inspired me and a buddy who saw you at Texpo in New Jersey, I think in 2018, to start our own podcast. So we started the Teacher Nerds podcast, and that's Nerds with a Z. We started that in the spring, and has been just an amazing ride. And, we did all our own graphics, our own website. He recorded the intro song, and our outro song. And it's been a really great experience. And I would say, just listening to the episodes that you've done on podcasting really gave me the confidence to, 1, try it in our classroom, but then 2, to go out, and I figured if I'm asking the students to do it, I might as well give it a shot too. Just a big thank you to you. And for those of you who haven't tried podcasting, with your students or yourself, give it a shot. Listen to episode 133 and listen to some of the previous episodes. I know, Chris, you've done a number of episodes already on podcasting. Give it a shot. It's something fun. The students really enjoy it. And, it's well worth it. Even if it's a, read aloud of one of their own stories that they've created. An interview with a historical figure. Anything like that. Give it a shot in your classroom. And a little shout out, wearing my Flipgrid t-shirt on Flipgrid. Mind blown. All right. Thanks a lot.
Ron, thank you for sending that in. And yes, it was very Inception or very meta to watch your Flipgrid while you were wearing a Flipgrid t-shirt. So definitely check out the Teacher Nerds podcast. Everybody go out on Twitter, follow at Teacher Nerds. And again, that's Nerds with a Z. And the links to everything for that podcast will be out in the show notes at chrisnessy.com/136. And I obviously couldn't be in more lockstep with Ron than obviously. I mean, that's why I titled the segment, Just Give It a Try. So try podcasting, audio recording, get your kids creating something, even if it's blogging, a YouTube channel, get your students creating. And there's really no excuse not to try any form of creating. And there's really no limit as to what you can do in terms of how old your students are, and just kind of work with what you've got. If you need recommendations or any advice, reach out to the people that you know, that you like, and that you trust. Thanks, Ron. And if you want to feature your story on this segment, go to chrisnessy.com/flipgrid and click on the Just Give It a Try grid, and I will feature your story on a future episode. Thank you again for checking out this episode of the House of EdTech podcast. And more specifically, thank you to everybody who chatted with me for this episode. It was a blast to connect with so many people face-to-face at ISTE 2019. But let's keep the conversation going. I put out episodes every 2 weeks, and I would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on the information in this episode and any episode you listen to at any time. For the show notes for this one, go to chrisnessy.com chrisnessy.com/136. Or you can send a message to me by going to chrisnessy.com/feedback. And there are a number of ways that we can connect. Start with Twitter. I'm at Mr. Nesi, MRNESI. Now, if you enjoy the podcast, thank you. I'm glad that you did. If this is the first time you're listening, thank you so much. I hope that I have earned your subscription. And if you're a longtime subscriber, hey, you know how I feel about you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you spending time with me for your Anytime, Anywhere PD. You are awesome. So, speaking of awesome, many thanks to my awesome supporters, and my awesome supporter program is powered by Patreon.com. What is Patreon and the awesome supporter program, you ask? Well, it's a way that you can help to make the podcast go. Thank you to Anthony Arnault from the New Teacher podcast at newteacher.org. Eric Kurtz, who I got to meet in Philly. He is the host of the Control-Alt-Achieve podcast that you can find at controlaltachieve.com. Thank you to Dan Gallagher. He was at the meetup. Check him out at gallaghertech.edublogs.org. Carlos Garza, Mr. G, from the ACE Tech podcast. You can find that over at aced.tech. Peggy George from Classroom 2.0 Live. Jen Giffen from Shooks and Giff, the podcast. Got to meet Jen face-to-face at Philly for Cheesesteaks. Check her and Kim Polishuk out on the Shooks and Giff podcast. You could find that at bit.ly/Shooksandgiff. Jeff Herb. Check him out at instructionaltechtalk.com. Mike Messner. So great to meet you. So great to talk to you. Check him out on Twitter at TeacherMike72. And JP Prezavento from the Bits and Bytes of Education podcast. Got to shake hands and hug it out with JP in Philly. Check his podcast out at jpprez.com and head over to podcastpd.com if you haven't heard the latest interview that we did with JP. Thank you to Lynn Smargis at Lynn Smargis on Twitter, Scott Titmus at SD Titmus, and Kyle Wilcox at Level Up Ed Tech. If you're interested, go to chrisnessy.com/awesome, and that's how you can become an awesome supporter. The next episode of the podcast will be 137, and that comes your way August 4th, 2019. Thanks for listening, and remember, using technology isn't difficult, just give it a try. Hey, I still feel like podcasting, so I have one more ask. If you have never taken the time, I would love it if you took a moment to rate and review the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. So if that's Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or someplace where you can leave a review, I would love it if you took a few seconds to rate and review the show. Love to hear those words, and it puts gas in my tank. Love you guys. Take care.